I'm really excited to be here. Jan reached out to me. It was, I looked back, it was last October about coming here, and I'm super excited. I have spoke at 5 widows retreats, but never at just a regular retreat. So I'm super excited to be here and super honored. So thank you again for having me here today. So I used to be a kindergarten teacher, so this might be a little bit interactive and have some fun things going on. So it's morning, so we can do that, right? At night, it's a little bit harder. Yes. Who's Carolyn? So I know who I'm talking. Oh, hi. Oh, great. Yes, perfect. All right. So old school, no cards. Here we go. I remember lying awake at night while my husband was dying. This might be a little emotional. Listening to make sure he was still breathing. Terrified to fall asleep because I was afraid he would die while I slept. My mind would race with fear about the future, my children, and how I could possibly survive losing him. And one day, while I was driving alone, crying uncontrollably, I finally screamed out to God, "You've got the wrong girl," because I truly couldn't see a future I could survive. But what I've learned since then is faith is not seeing the whole path. It's taking the next step, even when you can't see. We all want clarity before we move. But so often, God asks us to trust him before we can see. You may not have watched your husband die, but every one of us faces moments we can't see. Bethany shares with hers last night. We all have those moments we can't see. The path ahead, maybe for you, it's a diagnosis, broken relationship, financial stress, loneliness, prodigal child, got one of those. Steps God is asking you to take, or a future that looks nothing like what you planned. Anybody been there? The details are different, but our fear feels the same. So why is trusting God so hard for us? To understand my story, they got to go back. And I mean way back to the 90s. Yeah. Choker necklaces, baby doll tees, flannels, Nirvana, on and on and on. My story starts in the 90s. I met Luke Bader. This is when he was graduating. He was 18, I was 17 in this picture. So we met in high school at Portland Christian High School, small Christian school. And we actually never dated during high school, but we were good friends. I'd go to his baseball games and watch him. He thought I was cute in my cheerleading outfit, but we never dated each other. It was totally God's timing. We would talk during home ec class, and I'd tell him all of my boy drama. And he said, he actually wrote this in my yearbook. He said, "I hope someday you find a guy who can keep a handle on you." Little did I know that would someday be him. He graduated the year before me, and then I graduated, went to college. We both had different relationships at that time and both had broken up with them and came back after I graduated, and we ran into each other through mutual friends. And it was love at second sight. And we were engaged 3 months later. All again, God's timing with his story for our lives. It was a beautiful life. I was a kindergarten teacher. He was a mail carrier. We had the most gorgeous wedding down in the Portland area at Queen Anne Victorian Mansion. Gorgeous if you've been there. I always dreamed of getting married there, and I did. And it was just like a fairy tale. Everything. And I had an easy life up until then. Great childhood. And he had a lump on his ankle. It started getting bigger. He was a mail carrier, a walking mail carrier. So he had 9 miles that he would walk. And so he really noticed this. And at this time, he was 25. And I was 24. He went to the doctor and they said, "Oh, you're young. It's tendonitis. Like, don't worry about it." But it kept getting bigger and bigger. And eventually they decided to biopsy his ankle. Also need to mention, so we'd gotten married. 2 months later, gotten pregnant. So I was pregnant this time. And then found out that he had all this going on with his ankle. So I'll never forget, the doctor said, "I'm sorry, you have cancer. Mesenchymal chondrosarcoma, a very rare bone cancer, normally found in children." My whole world was rocked in a moment. And it was, at that point, the most challenging thing I'd ever faced. I was 24 years old. I was a newlywed. I was newly pregnant. And my husband got sick. Why? Why was this happening? So they started doing 5 days a week, yes, chemotherapy overnight. It was intense. And I would go with him to the hospital and just stay with him nonstop. And he had such a good attitude. Like, I was so proud of him. He would bring his Bible. This is before the Bible app, right? We actually had our physical Bibles, which was great because the nurses would talk to him about it. And he just had such a positive attitude. But honestly, I was fighting anger. So much anger. I didn't understand why this happened to my husband. I remember going to work, and my school that I worked at, they were great, but it just didn't seem fair. All these other young teachers, and they had all just gotten married too, and their husbands were fine. I didn't understand why it had to be me. So he continued doing chemotherapy, and it did not work. But the good news about his cancer is that it was only in his ankle, nowhere else in his body, which was a miracle. And so May 7th, 2004, he had his leg amputated just below his right leg. I remember walking into the hospital thinking, this is going to be the last time I see him walking on two legs. And the night before, we had gone to dinner, and he said, I need you to be strong for me. I was like, okay, I can do that. And at that point, I was very pregnant, 7 months pregnant. And I remember going into the room as they were preparing him, and I was strong. I did not cry one bit until they wheeled him away, and I fell to the floor against the wall, just in a crumpled mess, and just cried. And I was rubbing my belly saying, Hayden, Daddy's going to be okay. Daddy's going to be okay. And it was just this moment of, where are you, God? And this nurse came up to me, and she said, honey, do you have anybody here for you? And I said, yes. And we had a whole room of people from our church, family, friends that were supporting us during his amputation. We actually reframed that day from the day he lost his leg to the day he lost the cancer. And that we celebrated May 7th every year. And so we just had to reframe it that it was a different kind of day. I thought during this storm, if I could somehow prepare enough, plan enough, worry enough, maybe I could protect myself from the pain. But control is a terrible savior. I had a lot of fear of the future. I wanted to know what would happen. Would I become a widow at 24? Would I become a single mother? When we have fear, we have to fight it. Fear is false evidence appearing real. I'll say that again. False evidence appearing real. And when we have these thoughts, Jesus tells us to take every thought captive. He doesn't say just like, put this little thought to the side. No, take it captive. What does it mean to take something captive? You ask it where it came from, and you get rid of it. You do not keep dwelling on it. So when we have fear about our future or fear about anything, that's what we're supposed to do. This was my first major storm in life. Remember, kindergarten teacher. So, in a storm, we can feel out of control. We want safety. We want control. We want guarantees. But no one walks on water wearing one of these. I don't think they did. I don't think Peter ever walked on water with this. Fear makes us crave certainty. We want answers from God. We are asking why over and over. We want the timelines. We want the details. We want to know that everything's going to be okay. We want certainty because uncertainty is terrifying. I want my life jacket. We want God to explain everything. Why is this happening? Why does suffering exist? Why do my prayers seem to go unanswered? I learned in my journey to let go of why, because why can drive you crazy. We will not understand a lot of things here on earth. Throughout my husband's journey, how I explain it to my kids is it's like there's a puzzle, right? And God sees the whole puzzle, like the box that shows everything. We just see these little tiny pieces, and so we cannot comprehend why these things are happening. I also heard a sermon when Luke was sick, and it said, if God allowed it, I can accept it. I'll say that again because I think it's really good. If God allowed it, I can accept it because everything that happens flows through God's hands. He either causes it or he allows it. He does not cause the sickness and death, but he allows it. And if I trust him, then I need to be okay with what's happening, because if he allows it and I trust him, I accept it. I had so much anger in the beginning. Why my healthy 25-year-old husband, who'd actually never been sick with anything more than an ear infection, why was it him? Every time I start going down this path when all these things, and we can see it in our world, all the things happening that are awful, I remember the words, this world is not our home. And that is found in the verse Hebrews 13:14. For this world is not our permanent home. We are looking forward to a home yet to come. And to remember to keep our eyes on heaven. And that's why things on earth do not make sense. So many things happening that are so difficult. But keeping our eyes on heaven and that this is not home. So fear keeps us stuck. It keeps us in survival mode. Keeps our eyes on the waves, on the circumstances, not on Jesus. We don't risk. We don't trust. We don't hope. We don't really live. We stay in the boat. Fear convinces us that staying stuck is safer than trusting God. That's what the enemy wants us to believe. He wants us to believe that we should stay right where we're at, not take risks. Sometimes we wait until we feel ready. We need to just wait for that fear to disappear before taking that next step. We wait for the perfect circumstances. We wait to feel fully equipped. But courage is not the absence of fear. The details of our storm in this room differ. It could be divorce, abuse, infertility, anxiety, death, betrayal, and so many other things. But our fear is the same. And God says in Proverbs 3:5, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Not with some of your heart, and then, maybe you'll understand. No, trust in the Lord with everything that you have, and lean not on your own understanding. Because again, things in life are not going to make sense. I'm sure we all have stories of things in our lives that don't make sense. Fear makes us crave control. How can we actually trust God when we can't see what he's doing? I think this starts with this. You have to know God to trust God. We trust people's character that we know, that we spend time with. It's built through relationship. Do you spend time with God? Like Holly was talking about, that Jesus time in the morning. That's how we build a relationship. Think about your best friends. It's not built by just like knowing who they are. It's by knowing them and spending time with them. And we need to do the same with God. Just like there's a difference between knowing about somebody and knowing them. For example, a celebrity. You might know about them, but do you know them personally where you would trust them? There's a big difference. And so it's the same thing with God, that we need to actually know them. So our faith deepens in trials. There were so many nights I would lay on the floor begging God, and I mean begging God to heal my husband. But you know what happened during that time? I grew closer to God than I ever have in my entire life. Romans 5:3-5 says, not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Also, in James 1:2-3, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. How many of us consider it pure joy when we go through trials? I know I don't. That's something very challenging when something bad happens, to go pure joy. But it really does make us who God created us to be. So fear makes us forget. Sometimes we forget how God has already been faithful. Again, we focus sometimes on the worst case, the worst thing that can happen, and our brain can go down this awful place. We forget the past faithfulness that God has already carried us through. So remembering builds courage. Remembering when God has been faithful in the past. For me, every time that I would, cry out to God, I would be covered with the peace that passes all understanding. I would remember the people who had poured into me spiritually, financially, just so many different ways, and focus on Jesus. He doesn't promise that we won't go through hard things, but he promises we won't drown. Isaiah 43:2 says, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you won't be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze." And I have experienced this firsthand in my life. I thought I was going to drown many times. I'm sure we've all been there, but God has always carried me through. So after Luke's amputation, life was hard. So he had his amputation 2 months later. Our first son was born. And he tried to go back to work for a little bit as a mail carrier, but it was way too hard. So he ended up going on disability. We later went on to have 2 more kids. At one point, we had 3 kids, 3.5 and younger. It was craziness for a while. And it was a difficult life because he was always sick. He had diabetes, cirrhosis, pancreatitis. There was many, many things that were very, very difficult. And so he was always on disability while I was working. 13 years later, we were on a family trip, and we were playing baseball. That was his favorite thing. And when he hit the ball, he actually fell and he landed on his lungs and liver and like all of this area, and something fell off. And so he went to the doctor, they did a scan, and they found the cancer was back, and this time in his lungs. And there were several tumors in his lungs, and it had been 13 years. After you pass the 10-year mark, you're usually like, we're good, like we celebrate every year. Yeah, I did not think this was coming back. I thought this was gone forever. And apparently there had been a couple cells that lay dormant in his body and came back. And it was much different this time with children. They all knew of his cancer, obviously, because of his leg, and I had written a book about it, and my older 2 had read it, and they knew all about it. And so sitting them down to tell them it was back was really difficult, but we were very positive. And he did not want to do chemo, but we couldn't find any other options for him. So we told them, my kids were 9, 11, and 13 at that time. And it was a difficult time, to say the least. So this time it wasn't just me seeing him go through the chemotherapy and lose his hair and throw up and all the things that come with it. It was my kids. And that, I think, was the most heart-wrenching part, is watching my kids watch their dad go through it. So he went through chemotherapy maybe about a year off and on, and it didn't work. The tumors just kept getting bigger. And eventually he went on hospice, and my fear returned. And God was calling me yet again to get out of the boat. It's one thing to trust God when the storm first comes. It's another to trust him when the storm keeps going. So often we wrestle with God, which wrestling with God is a great thing to talk about your feelings in. I'm going to read you some journal entries that are very emotional, but it's really where I was to help you understand that. We can talk about confusion, disappointment, anger. So this is when Luke was sick. I can't believe I have to watch my husband die. I can't believe my sweet babies have to watch their daddy die. God, why? Why would you allow this? I can handle it, but why do my babies have to go through this immense pain that is coming that will impact the rest of their lives? So sad, so sad. I just feel a heaviness today. There's so much pain, so much suffering. God, why? What will become of my babies? Will it break them? Or will it mold them into who you want them to be? My heart is so heavy knowing what is to come. There is nothing I can do to stop it. God, can you hear us? Can you heal him? This world has too much pain and heartache, just too much. And to tell you a little bit more about what I said in the beginning of You've Got the Wrong Girl, I was crying in the car, which was my only place to process things, probably a month before Luke died, and just bawling, and I'm saying, you've got the wrong girl. You made a mistake, God. I cannot do this. I cannot walk my children through the death of their father. And I cannot do this. And this journal expresses a little more of feeling like the wrong girl. It's been rough. Luke was sick and throwing up and in so much pain, crying and agony. Why? Why is he in so much pain? Please, Jesus, don't end it like this. Don't do this to my babies. I can handle it, but not them. I beg of you, heal my husband here on earth. Make him whole, please. Tears falling, heart literally breaking. Please, oh please hear my cries. God, please heal him. Make him whole. I know you can change your plans. Please, God, I want this more than anything in the world. Please, I don't want my baby's hearts to break. Please, Luke says he isn't doing any more chemo and he thinks he's worse. Oh God, what are we going to do? Will I be a widow? Can you hear me? Can you see my tears? Don't you weep with me? And collect those many tears in a bottle. It must be a big bottle because I am crying more tears than I ever have, and there will be more. Jesus, my God, please hear me. Show your favor, show your love, show your grace. Make a miracle. I know you can. Please, please, please. You have the power and the capability, so please, Jesus, heal my love, my husband of almost 15 years. I want to grow old with him. I want to have grandkids with him. I want him at our kids' graduations and weddings. Don't you want that for us? Why so much pain? Both physical for Luke and emotional for all of us. It's not right. Why have you chosen me for this? I'm not good enough for this assignment. Not qualified to possibly have to walk my babies through death. I am so weak, and there is no one who gets this path. What it's like that I'm walking through. Jesus, help me. Jesus, hold me. Take me through this impossible-looking storm. Make a way. Perform a miracle. I know you have a plan, but why does it have to hurt so bad? Why does it have to be such a silent, solitary place all alone in the desert? And that's where it was at that point. And I'm sure we can all relate to that with our own storms and just that wrestling with God. And that's okay. He wants to hear our thoughts. He wants to know where we're at. He wants to be your best friend. Like you would talk to your best friend and question your friend and talk to them like, do you love me? Like, I don't understand this. Trust is choosing to believe God is still good when our circumstances aren't. We need to look at the past faithfulness of God in the Bible. Look at the people who trusted God and how he came through. Abraham had to trust when he was called to sacrifice his son. Moses trusted when he got up to the seas. He trusted they were going to part. David faced Goliath, and that took a lot of trust. Esther, she risked her life for her people. And Peter walked on water. We need to look at how God was faithful to them in the past. How many of you can look back and see something God has already carried you through? So here's going to be the interactive part. Write down something that God has been faithful to you. And here's the second part. This is the part those of you who don't like to get up and meet new people might not like. But it's the teacher in me. You're going to find someone that you did not know before the retreat and share with them how God has been faithful to you. That was so amazing to see you guys meeting new people and sharing of God's faithfulness. And I challenge you to go back to that friend later and talk more. So this card is for you to put somewhere you're going to see it. Maybe on your refrigerator. Maybe you put it in your Bible. Maybe just somewhere you're going to see it to remind yourself how God has already been faithful in your life. He's already proven faithful. And so he will be faithful again. The same God who carried you then will carry you now. There is a time when faith is more than believing. It requires stepping out of the boat. It means letting go of safety, letting go of control, letting go of guarantees, and stepping out of the boat. And that feels better. Well, it's getting a little hot. Tanya's like, you still have your life jacket on. Like, I know. Peter did not just believe Jesus was there. He actually had to step out of the boat. So as you know, our theme is water walking faith. So I thought I would read Matthew 14:27 through 31. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on water, and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "Ye of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" I love the word immediately. He uses that several times. It's not in 30 seconds, in a month, in a year. When I get back to it, I've got a whole world of people I'm working with. When I get back to you, no, immediately. Like Jesus does that for us. We want God to calm the storm first. Then I'll trust you. Then I'll act. I need you to tell me the ending first. How's this going to end before I step out on that boat with you? But faith requires trust before certainty. So my family's storm was not over. May 23rd, 2020, my husband, Luke, went to heaven. It was, he had cancer, but it was sudden. He actually died from a blood clot, so it was faster than we were expecting. I woke up the kids to say goodbye, and I'll never forget the sound of my daughter saying, "No, it's not time." And I said, "Yes, it is." And God gave me this supernatural peace to walk them through his death. I was not crying. I was completely calm. I looked at him and I said, "You're going to hear, 'Well done, my good and faithful servant.' You're going to meet my grandparents today." And God just gave me this supernatural peace. And I've realized now that God didn't have the wrong girl. He had the right one because he empowered me to do what he had set before me. It was extremely hard watching the kids say goodbye. We were by his side for about an hour, and it was actually really peaceful, and God gave us a beautiful time with him, and we played the song "I Can Only Imagine," and that's actually when he took his last breath. Still can't really listen to that song. And watching my kids say goodbye to their dad was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. They were 12, 14, and 15. I just remember my youngest, Peyton, who's now 18, he was 12 at the time, just saying, "You're such a good daddy, I love you." And after the kids left, they went out of the room, I laid with his lifeless body, and I wailed from a deeper place than I ever knew. I thought I knew brokenness, but not until that moment. I thought I was prepared. He had been sick 16 and a half out of 17 years with all kinds of things. I knew it was coming. I remember his hospice nurse saying, "You're going to think you're prepared, but you're not." And just when someone's soul leaves their body, it is a completely different experience that changes everything. And it was a very, very difficult time. I'm going to read a little bit to you about that time. So this is my book, Widow Goals, Steps to Finding Peace When You Lose Your Spouse. And this is what it was like the day after. I woke up the morning after my husband passed away in utter agony. Suddenly, the memories of his last breath and the sounds of my kids crying out, "No, Daddy, it's not time," came flooding into my mind. I began to wail because the pain was too intense for me to keep inside. It just couldn't be true. My husband of almost 17 years couldn't be gone. The father of my children could not have been taken away from them so soon. Even though I had witnessed his death with my eyes, my mind couldn't comprehend it. The crushing weight of it all was too much to bear. I rolled over and looked at my daughter. The tears flowed more intensely as the harsh reality set in that my daughter, at 14, was fatherless. All I wanted to do was go back to sleep to escape the nightmare of my reality. With the sounds of my cries, both of my sister-in-laws came running to my room. "I'm so sorry, Shell," Jessica said, rubbing my back as I lay face down with my head on the pillow. I could feel the bed shake as my daughter cried by my side, my sweet baby, crying tears of a broken heart. The tears for her daddy, the tears too deep to be explained. The years of father-daughter dances and dates would now be a bittersweet memory of the past. The request for one more goodnight kiss and one more "I love you, Daddy," never to be heard again. My heart ached with a deeper pain than I had ever felt before. In my 41 years of life on earth, I thought I knew my fair share of pain, but absolutely nothing compared to the intensity of the pain I felt at that moment. The hole dove so deep and was so dark, I felt it might swallow me into its depths where I would live forever. And I also have a social media post I made right after he died. Yesterday, I survived my first full day as a widow. So surreal. I woke up crying and felt like it was all a bad dream. I laid in bed for hours with Haley as we cried and talked, and we were comforted by my sister-in-laws and best friend, Deborah. I finally got the strength to get out of bed and face the day, the first day without my Luke. I talked with my counselor, hospice nurse, and so many people as we were surrounded by love. About 1,000 times. I cried as I saw Luke's things just as he left them, like his prosthetic leg, hat, glasses, and clothes. I lost it when I saw our Christmas tree stand, as the thought of doing Christmas without Luke, who loved Christmas to an extreme, was debilitating. Everyone around me knew what to do without me even asking. Deborah took the kids out when I needed a moment to let out the agonizing pain I was feeling as I laid in my mom's lap and cried and wailed from a place of pain I didn't even know was possible. My family came over and did all kinds of cleaning and projects that needed to get done. They didn't even ask. They just saw what needed to be done and did it. That's what I need right now, people who see a need and do it. Because I have no idea when asked what I really need. I've never felt the love and care of Jesus so much as I did while watching my house full of people working to help us. We keep Luke's memory alive by constantly talking about him throughout the day and laughing with fun memories. But there is still an immense empty feeling in our house. Our hearts are breaking as we are struggling with the last memories we have with Luke, as he didn't look like himself, and we are praying that we can just remember him how he was with his most handsome smile. Please pray for us in this area. I saw things the kids thankfully didn't that were a bit traumatizing, and I want to get past that. Haley and I stayed up until after 2 a.m. talking, and I feel an even deeper bond with her and all of the kids as we navigate through our pain. There were moments yesterday that I thought I couldn't go on, but then God gave me more strength. I know we will rise again, and I know God will make beauty out of these painful ashes, and we will one day be able to make it through the day without crying. So that brings you back to where I was. I explained to people that grief is like this. Every day is dark, like a dark and stormy night. Every single day is like that. One day there's a peak of sun coming through. You laugh or you smile, or something good happens, and you're like, there is life out there. There is something good. And as God heals your heart, the days become more half and half. Like, oh, I was happy half the day, and to where I am now 6 years later, where I still have the storms, but they are much fewer and much less intense. My biggest storms now are for the big moments that my kids, their dad's missing out, like my youngest is going to graduate June 10th. You know, moments like that are really hard, but I know that the storm will pass. I used to lay on the floor and just say, Jesus, help. And I would stare at this picture in my mind. Someone had sent me this picture when Luke was sick. And I would just close my eyes and put my hand up in the air and just say, Jesus, help me, I'm drowning. Jesus, help me. And he would always cover me with the peace that passes all understanding. It cannot be explained. How can I be okay? My husband just died. How am I okay? Jesus, the only way. I was suddenly a solo parent of a 12, 14, and 15-year-old. Those are hard ages anyways. Throw in the death of a father and COVID, it was a lot. My oldest definitely started acting out, and it was a very difficult time in my life. I was stripped of my wife identity. I had been a wife for 17 years. Who was I without that? And it was such a dark time. But one of the things that helped me is what we're talking about, recalling the past faithfulness of God. And I thought of so many things that happened during Luke's cancer. We didn't have a lot of money at all. He was on disability, and I was a teacher off and on and tutoring, just doing what I could to survive and be by his side and the kids. And we had two uncles that came together and paid for our mortgage for about 2 years, which was amazing. And both of those uncles are now in heaven. So hopefully they're all hanging out with Luke. So that was an amazing thing. The five of us had never been on a plane together. We just couldn't afford it. The Dream Foundation, they grant last wishes to terminal adults. They sent us to Disneyland, and that was amazing. Just so many things. Luke was a huge Oregon Ducks fan. Like, he had season tickets back in the day. He loved that. And we got to go like on the field and in the locker room, and just amazing things happened that God put in our lives. And we just really lived at the end. It was like, let's make every day count. Let's make every day a memory. And I know that has actually changed my perspective on life now, because that's how I try to live every day, because I know how short it can be. Another thing that was really amazing. So Luke's favorite restaurant was Red Robin. I don't know if you guys have that. Does anyone know what that is? Okay. Yes, because we're in the Portland area. And it was COVID. Everything shut down. And it was my daughter's birthday just about 10 days before Luke died. It was her birthday. And she loved Red Robin too. Somebody heard our story, and Red Robin came to us like a parade. Like, we had the Red Robin dressed up, and they had a big sign for Haley and everything. And so we were all sitting outside having a COVID birthday with the grandparents and everything. And we knew they were coming, and they come down the street, and it was so exciting. They brought us all food, and we had these beautiful pictures with my daughter and her dad and everything. And I mean, just so many blessings that were just these amazing experiences. We can look back and see God totally in it. Even the last night Luke was alive, we can look at it. So during COVID, we watched a lot of movies. We actually look back, we had 2 months of COVID. COVID started in March, he died in May, where the kids were home, and we watched movies every night. We have a list of, I think it's 40 some movies we watched with Luke, but it was such a beautiful, sweet time, because all he could really do was sit and watch TV. And the night before, when I was saying goodnight to the boys, they shared a room. We had a new puppy. That's a whole other story. 3-month-old puppy as my husband was dying. And anyways, the puppy comes in, Haley comes in, and we did a family hug. We had never done a family hug ever. It happened the night before he died. All of us just suddenly hugged. That night, he just wanted to spend, I actually had the sense I need to just be with him, spend extra time together. I ended up cooking him a grilled cheese sandwich at midnight that he wanted me to make. And we sat in bed and watched TV. And I was like, hey, this is our best date ever. He's like, yeah, it is. And we just had this incredibly beautiful time together. So I can look at the goodness of God and see how he's pulled me through things. Also, when I was a brand new baby widow, I talked to every widow that I knew and said, please tell me it's okay. And I had widows who poured into me, which inspired me to do what I do today, pouring into other widows. When we are in fear, we can have what's called ants. My counselor taught me this. Automatic negative thoughts. So you can have a thought, like, let's just say it's nobody likes me. I've definitely had this one before. Your brain will go through the files and say, oh yeah, so-and-so didn't call you back. They don't like you. And it will try to like confirm that this is correct in your brain. And so we need to have ant eaters, the things that we say, no, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. People do like me. People do love me. And so when we're in fear, those ants can try to creep in. So we've got to fight those ants. So when Peter looked at the waves, the distractions, the trouble, the cancer, all the things, that's when he started to sink. So our fear shifts our focus. And whatever we focus on expands. Have you noticed that? Like, you're thinking about something, even like, okay, you get a new red car, you see red cars everywhere, you know what I mean? Anything you're focusing on is going to expand. So if we are looking for those negatives and all the things, we're going to see that, we're going to feel it. And again, we need to let go of why. So God met me in motion, not overnight. Like I said, it was the stormy days that turned into better days. I poured into healing like it was my job. When I coach people, I tell them, you need to pour into healing like it's your job, because you can't be good at anything until you heal. And I learned a really important phrase. What we feel, God can heal. That means we don't stuff it down. We don't try to think about it later. Like, we feel it. So I coach everyone, when you feel it, cry. I don't care if you're in the grocery store, kid pickup line, like, it does not matter where you're at. Feel what you're feeling. And God taught me that. I learned about grief myths, grief education, which tomorrow I'll be going more into that in the breakout session for those of you interested. I went to counseling, grief counseling, read every grief book, went to a retreat, which was crazy because it was COVID, but God opened up a grief retreat that changed my life that I went to. and I found Widow Community. As I began healing, I started sharing with others what God was doing for me. Peter, going back to the verses we read earlier, Peter doubted and sank, but Jesus still caught him. He's like, no, it's not too late. I still catch you. Courage is obedience in the middle of fear. I want you to think about this. What step could God be asking you to take? It could be trusting in some hard situation. It could be forgiving someone. Maybe it's a ministry God's calling you to. Maybe it's something you've dreamed of, or maybe it's just facing a hard situation. So what I've discovered is sometimes the steps we are most afraid to take, become the very place where God creates purpose, healing, and impact. This is where he makes beauty from ashes. This is where he turns mourning into dancing. I never would have chosen this life. I was a 41-year-old widow. Never would have ever dreamed that would be me when I said I do to Luke. I never wanted fatherless children. That's still a challenge. I never wanted this pain, especially for my kids. But this is the story that God gave me. And I have personally seen him turn my mourning into dancing. And again, as I healed, I began to help others. So how I started was TikTok. That's the very first thing I did. Somebody said, you want to reach people? Go on TikTok. So I'm like, okay. And they're really cringy videos if you go back to the very beginning. And I just started sharing, and there was a huge community of widows that were looking for help and looking for Jesus. And so I just started there and realized, okay, people really need this. And I met a widower on a Facebook page, and we noticed that they were turning to all the wrong things, like everything but Jesus. And so we're like, these people need Jesus. Let's start a podcast. So in 2021, we started Widowed Too Soon, and it's been going over 5 years, over 230 episodes in over 100 countries, and God has blessed that immensely. It's the only, no, I heard there's a new one, but it was the only Christian widow podcast. So maybe there's 2 now. And a lot of widows turn to mediums, they turn to all the wrong things. And so we're trying to get the message out that Jesus is the only way that you can heal. So we started that. That was 11 months into my journey, I started that. I started a nonprofit called Widow Goals. And that is because I went to every church in my area. I live in the Vancouver, Washington area. Nobody had anything for widows. But yet, widows are mentioned 103 times in the Bible, but so few churches are stepping up to help widows. And so I was like, we have to do something about this. So I started a local group. We still meet once a month, and we have now groups in over 30 cities, just launched in Australia. Very excited about that one. I'm training a girl there on how to do her group. And my favorite thing that we do are retreats. They're powerful. We're doing another one in October, also called Water Walking Faith, because Jan said I could copy the name. And they love it. They're all excited, so thank you. She's like, well, it's God, you know. So, so we're doing that in October. If you know a widow, please send them to widowgoals.org. Has all of the information about the retreats, the podcasts, like all the stuff, because there's so few resources for widows, especially Christian widows, especially younger widows. And so we're trying to help everyone. And these retreats are life-changing. These widows come in there, some of them 2 or 3 months out from losing their husband, and they are so broken. And God uses some of us who've been seasoned in this for a little while to show them that God will heal you. God can heal you. You don't need to stay in this place. So I started the nonprofit, and then I wrote my book. It's basically 30 steps to help you find peace when you lose your spouse. Or I've had people who are not widowed have read it also, and it's helped them. So I wrote that. I wrote a leader guide and a workbook, so this can go into churches. And so there is a resource for churches. I began grief coaching, and as I am doing today, I began speaking. And this is not all about me. This is Jesus. Like, he took me from those journal entries you read to where I am today. And it's not me, it's Jesus. And so I'm so thankful that he gave me this story and that I'm able to help other people. I want to read to you another journal entry and explain a little bit more about the beauty to ashes. So this is another one during a hard time. With the bigger wound comes a closer, deeper relationship with you, and for that I'm thankful. You will never leave me or forsake me, and you are drawing me closer, and I know you will make beauty out of the ashes I see. In all directions, as I wade through the smoke, fire, and ash, my life are covered with ash all around. I cannot see what you are doing. I cannot see where you are leading, but yet I hold tightly to your hand as you lead my life wherever you are taking me, deeper still into the unknown. I find comfort that in my darkness you are leading me. Your strong but kind hand lovingly leads me every blind step of the way. I am seeking God in a new place, a place of complete brokenness, a place that words can't explain and no one can truly understand. God, please help me. I am so broken, hardly able to lift my head, hardly able to take a step. So hurt, so much agony. Will the pain ever stop? Will I ever have more joy, more peace? God, I feel like I'm dying inside. I just want the pain to stop. I just want all to be right again. I have nothing left. Oh God, please make beauty out of these ashes. And it's so great to be on the side of it where God has made beauty from the ashes. And I shared some of those journal entries at my second retreat. And I'm looking at this girl, young girl. She was 26 when her husband died. And she raises her hand, just tears streaming down her face. And she said, it's so surreal to hear you read those journal entries because, like, if that wouldn't have happened, if Luke wouldn't have died and all those things, I don't know if I would be okay because God's used you in my life. And that was like a full circle moment of like, wow, God. And then I've had two other big moments like that at our first retreat. There's about 20 women. We did it in Vancouver. I'm just worship time, and I'm just watching all these women weep and worship. And it's like God brought me back to Luke's deathbed. And he said, if he didn't die, this moment wouldn't be happening. And it was powerful. And then a third time it happened in January in Dallas. My daughter, Haley, who's now 19 or 20, she came on the retreat with us to lead worship. And it was so beautiful. It was the same thing, worship, back to Luke's deathbed. If that wouldn't have happened, she wouldn't be doing this. And not only was she leading worship, she launched a ministry for the kids of widows. And that is the most like amazing thing to see, how God is reading my old journals, like how will this shape them? You know, and that she's like, I didn't know anybody to talk to. I didn't know any kids of widows. So now hers is called Parent Lost Goals. If you know one who's lost a parent, it's on Instagram. And she just shares little videos and tries to help people. And so that moment too was absolutely amazing to see God make beauty from the ashes. It's crazy how many lives have been touched by Luke's life. In fact, we watched, it was the 6th year on May 23rd, and we watched his celebration of life. And I'm speaking then and saying, so many lives have been touched, but it hadn't even scratched the surface with what God wanted to do with my widow ministry. And so now to see people all over the world, it's absolutely amazing. The thing that I feared the most, Luke's death, is the thing that God has used the most to impact others. Our yes affects others. We have different stories and different experiences, but someone needs to hear your story. What is God calling you to do? In what ways do you need to step out of the boat? In our storms, at first, it's just survival, just trying not to drown. Definitely been there. We eventually walk on water when we're trusting, but eventually we can learn to dance. Dancing freely means freedom, not carrying all the weight. We're trusting our partner. He knows all the dance moves. Even when we don't, he will guide us. I love dancing, so this speaks to me very clearly. We have joy when we dance. We have to let go of control. We have to be carefree. For so many years, I thought faith meant holding on tightly and trying not to sink. I thought courage meant not being afraid, but over time, God began teaching me something deeper. At first, we just try to survive the waves. We're tense, exhausted, gripping fear tightly, trying to control everything. But dancing is different. You cannot dance freely while trying to stay in control. Dancing requires trust. It requires surrender. It requires your partner to lead. It requires freedom. And I think that's what God wants for us. Not just barely surviving life, but trusting Him so deeply that even in the middle of uncertainty, we can rest in Him. Because when you truly trust the one holding you, you stop living terrified of every wave. I'm going to play a song, or we're going to play a song for you in just a minute, that became deeply meaningful to me in a season where it was hard to trust God. A few years later, my daughter sang this song at communion at my second wedding. And I remember thinking, only God could write a story like this. Because there was a time I truly could not imagine joy existing again. I couldn't imagine laughter or dancing. Maybe that's why this song means so much to me. It reminds me that God doesn't just want us cautiously walking on the waves in fear. He wants us trusting Him enough to dance. So as we play the song, if you want to close your eyes and imagine dancing with Jesus and just see what He wants to say with you during this song. Isn't that a beautiful song? Love it. Some of the words, I set every storm into place so you would remember my name. I listened to that a few weeks ago and I was like, that's it. You are my masterpiece. I dare you to believe how much I love you. The future is open wide. I have good plans for you. Your past is dead and gone. I'll chase you down. Can you see us dancing? It's beautiful. Some of you walked into this room facing waves no one else can see. Some of you are exhausted from trying to hold everything together. Maybe today, God isn't showing you the whole path. Maybe He's asking you for one step of trust, one step of obedience, one step of surrender. During your reflection time, take some time to journal about how God is asking you to step out of the boat. You don't need to see the whole path. You just need to trust the one holding your hand. And one day, the waves that once terrified you may become the very place where you learn to dance. Thank you.